Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to Presley Mania. My name is Rhonda, and in case you're new to my channel, I want you to know that I am here to protect the legacy of Elvis and Lisa Marie Presley. And if you enjoy what you hear on my show, be sure and hit the subscribe button and that bell, and it will notify you of every upcoming show that I do. So, there are a few things that I wanted to give you an update on. First of all, I have secured a couple of documents from the Elvis Presley Enterprises Bridget Cruz GWS auctions lawsuit that's going on. And I'm going over it. There are a couple of more things that I want to get and I want to compare before I start doing a show on these. Probably will start those next week and just kind of give you an update. There's so much involved in it, and it involves Greg McDonald's son Tom and Greg's wife Sherry, how they came into the items that they're holding and that they have, and Graceland's fight to get them back. There's a lot to it, and so I just want to make sure before I do a show that I got my ducks in a row and that what I say is completely factual, and I don't make any mistakes on that. So I had a friend of mine, thank you Cheryl, send me a video today, and it was a YouTube video on something that Priscilla did back in, I believe it was November of 2016. She did an appearance on a show called Loose Women, and it's got to be, I'm thinking it's from the UK or England, somewhere over in there, judging by the accents. And I thought it might be kind of fun to, or kind of depressing, however you want to look at it, to go through some of the questions that they asked her and her responses. And why do I think that that's relevant, being that it's almost 10 years ago? Well, I'll tell you why. Because she has got this new book coming out, Softly As I'll Leave You, right? And what I'm concerned about is, supposedly, this book is supposed to be about life after Elvis. Okay? Well, on all of the shows that she's doing where she's traveling around the world and she's giving her talks, pretty much everything revolves around Elvis, right? What do people want to know about when it comes to Priscilla Presley? When you think of Priscilla, what is the first thing you think of? Elvis, right? Elvis and Priscilla and Elvis. And that's what people want to know. Most of the time, the people coming to see her shows are Elvis fans, or the fans that she's accumulated along the way. But so whatever narrative that she is spinning or has spun in the past, and the questions and things that she has asked, 9 times out of 10, they all pertain to her life with Elvis. What happened after in her, saving Graceland, which, I don't believe that either. But yes, that's why this concerns me, is because this book that is coming out, if you look at the cover, it has got a picture of her when they opened up Graceland, and she's walking down the driveway and Graceland's in the background. Okay? Softly As I Leave You. I don't feel like, in all honesty, that she ever left behind the legacy of Elvis. Elvis has been a part of her story continually. And the reason that I feel like it has been is because it has something to do with the almighty dollar. She has made money off the name Elvis Presley for years. That's what gave her notoriety. That's what people still associate her with. That's why she still wants to be buried. That's why she wants to be buried at Graceland, because in her mind, she and Elvis go together like peas and carrots, okay? But there were other people before Priscilla. There were other women. After Priscilla, she was not the only one. However, she is the only one who gave him Lisa Marie, right? So, and I know there are other things out there where people claim that they're Elvis's child, but what we know for sure is that Lisa Marie is his biological daughter. She is the one who inherited Elvis's estate, his name, all of that stuff. Despite what people say about Priscilla, it went straight to Lisa, and now it's gone to Riley. So let's get into this interview. And they started off by basically saying, okay, so you were 14 years old when you met Elvis Presley, which I cringe every time they say that, because I know what this generation now is thinking. And you were 21 when you married him. So right off the bat, it seems like she has been with Elvis, or was with Elvis, from 14 till the time they got married at 21. Wrong. Wrong. Elvis left Germany. She was 14. When did she see him again? 2 years later. Two. Okay. Now, was there contact in between? I'm sure. Phone calls, whatever. But bottom line is, she didn't see him again until she was 16. She did not move to Memphis until she was 17, almost 18 years of age. Almost 18. 18 back then was considered legal. Elvis enrolled her in school so she could, in Immaculate Conception, so she could finish out her schooling. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background. Most of you who follow my channel are really deep Elvis fans, and you know all of this backstory. But just in case, for those of you who didn't, that's what it was. So let's get into what was said. She said, they were talking to her about living at Graceland. Well, when Priscilla first moved to Memphis, she didn't live at Graceland. She lived with Vernon and Dee Presley and the Stanley Boys, okay? Little by little, Elvis was traveling a lot. She would start moving things into Graceland. So by the time she had, quote, moved in, she had been doing it a little bit along. It was almost just like a natural progression. You know, she was very, very good at how she did that. So anyhow, so they were talking about her moving into Graceland, and she says that it was difficult for her when she moved into Graceland because Elvis already had an inner circle of friends, you know, and so she was made basically to fit into his world. Can you see what's happening already? I'm just getting started. She was made to fit into his world, and she said it was like living in a bubble. Those were her words, not mine. Like living in a bubble. She said that they went places, they did things. They went to the roller skating rink that he rented out, so it was just their group. They went to the movies, but he rented it out because it was their group. They went to Liberty Land, he rented it out, and it was their group. Well, there's a reason he had to do that. We know that. She knew that. Everybody knows that. Elvis couldn't go anywhere without attracting a crowd, you know, and like she said, they really couldn't go out to dinner because he would draw a crowd, you know, they were wanting to take pictures of him and, you know, talk to him, and I can't blame them, so would I. But it caused for a different kind of lifestyle. Well, there were 2 or 3 ladies doing the interview, and they asked Priscilla, they said, well, but these were your teenage years. Did you think that you were missing out on something. Okay. All right. Let's think about this a minute, okay? They weren't really all of her teenage years, okay? So we'll get back to that. She says, her answer is, I didn't have my teenage years as a normal girl, obviously. I had to adapt. What? Okay, you were with Elvis. You visited him twice. After you turned 16, you visited him twice. You ended up moving into Graceland when you were almost 18. What about all those years in between before you moved in there? Those were more teenage years than what you had after you moved in, right? Right? Yes, yes. What about Germany? What about the people that have been interviewed who knew you, who went to school with you there, who talk about the fact that you did all kinds of the normal things, that you hung out with friends, about the guys you dated, about the prom dates that you went on? What about the interviews of people who say that you really didn't want to move in to Graceland, that you were so hooked on this guy that you were dating that you wanted to stay there? What about that? It sounds to me like there's a spin being put on this. And then what did she mean by she had to adapt? Well, she said, I adapted. She goes, but I listened to the music that he wanted to listen to. I watched the movies that he wanted to watch. I went to the places that he wanted to go. So basically, she's making it look like that she had no life outside of Elvis, that she had to do whatever he wanted her to do. And we're going to get more into this in a little bit, and you'll see why I was so frustrated with this and why I felt like it was time to address it, because I'm worried about the book. I am seriously worried about what's going to be in there. And so she puts this out there on TV, and it's like, again, more of the same control factor that's going on. And then remember, she used to say things like, I was just so lonely. I was just so lonely. Well, when she first moved to Memphis, Elvis was off shooting a movie. And we know that most of the time, she did not go with him on those movie sets. That she was left in Memphis. Okay? So she was going to school in Memphis. I'm sure she could have made friends. There were, places she could go, things she could do. All right. But she contradicts the narrative that she spun about being lonely by saying that they all traveled together. So basically, she wasn't left behind at Memphis. But that's not true either. Which one is it? Were you left behind? Were you left behind when you went to do the movies? But we know they did travel together some. So I'm not going to discount that 100%. But what I am saying is that she's just a walking contradiction here. She says that when she realized that what she was living in, her relationship with Elvis, when she realized that it was different and it wasn't normal, was when she started taking a dance class. Okay, well, I went and looked that up. When did she start taking dance class lessons? And it said, this was just a quick search, so if some of you know, if I've got this date wrong, please be sure and tell me. I'm not above making a mistake. 1968. Well, we all know what happened, right? She ended up having an affair with her dance instructor. Yeah. No kidding. Her relationships are different. Really? Yeah. She said she started realizing then how different things were. I bet you did. And then they asked her, how did you find your friends? Because you were always with his friends. It's almost like the way they understand it is that Priscilla didn't have any friends because she was always just with Elvis's friends. And she says, I was with his friends and the wives of his friends. And this is what she said. They were pretty much chosen for me. Check it out. Go listen to the video yourself. They were pretty much chosen for me. That's what she said. Like she had no choice in the matter. I got along with them very well, and especially with a couple of them, she said. But I'm just sitting here. The next question that was asked was, did you find it lonely? That was the next question that they asked of her. And she said it was lonely in that she didn't have any information as to what was going on with her age group. She said, I didn't know what was going on in the scene. What was going on with music? Oh my gosh. But she does credit Elvis with being brilliant on listening and choosing music and artists that would make it and who would not make it. Okay, I'm going to break this down a minute because that statement right there really bothers me. You're going to sit here and say that you didn't know what was going on with your age group. So when you would go out by yourself, we've seen pictures of her driving a car out by herself, pulling into the gates of Graceland, stopping and signing autographs, all of those things, listening to the radio. You knew she was. She wasn't listening to the music of her generation, of what was going on. Yes, she was. She even told Elvis about songs. Give me a break. This is not about poor little old Priscilla. I was living in a bubble. Oh my gosh, he chose my friends for me. Oh my gosh, poor pitiful me. No, stop. Enough is enough. Okay, then the lady says, you shared Elvis with everyone. Did that have an impact on your relationship, meaning with him? And she goes, yes. I mean, I lived with 8 other men. Some were married, some were not. And she said, Elvis told me from an early age not to share any of the things that I saw happening, basically, with the other guys. Well, that's not making sense to me. Okay. If you all traveled together, like she said, if the ones that were married, you were with them when you were in Memphis, right? And when you weren't with the guys, you were with their wives, what would you have seen? Now, I'm not saying she didn't see something. She probably did, but I'm just saying it's more of the look at what I had to do. I had to keep my mouth shut. I was told what to say. I was told what not to say. And she said that she was afraid of being around the married guys' wives for fear that she would slip up and say something that she wasn't supposed to. Now, granted, I'm sure she was around them sometimes when the wives weren't, but it still seems like something is missing here, that something is off. So I don't get that lonely feeling thing that she's talking about. I feel like that's another one of her inventions. Then this one was a kicker for me. One of the ladies asked her if she had therapy after she and Elvis divorced. She said, because it seems you were in such a rigid, controlled environment. How did you find yourself, Priscilla? Okay. This is the lie. This is the spin. This is what makes me mad. This. Poor Priscilla. She lived a rigid, controlled environment. Priscilla says, it was a journey. I never had therapy. I didn't sign a check until I was 29 years old. But yet you had an unlimited checking account. So, sorry, no pity for you there. She said, I didn't know who I was, is what she says. As a woman, I didn't know who I was. And then the interviewer butts in and says, because you didn't know who you were because Elvis told you how to wear your hair, how to do your makeup, how to dress. And Priscilla's sitting there the whole time doing this. Yes. Even my clothes, she says. She said she didn't know who she was, and that Elvis's considerations were her considerations. Elvis's fears were her fears. Elvis's thoughts on certain things were her thoughts. In other words, she didn't even have an original thought. She couldn't do anything original. It was all about what he wanted. How is that painting him? How is that preserving the legacy of Elvis Presley? You tell me. It isn't. It isn't. It's painting him as a monster, and he wasn't one. Okay. She said that she noticed in conversations that she found herself, when asked a question, relaying what his answers would have been, what his opinions were. Well, I'm sorry. I feel like that's not his fault. That's on you. I mean, you can have an original thought and you can state your own opinion. But I guess she was living in such a bubble that she couldn't have an original thought. She couldn't have any other friends. She couldn't wear what she wanted to wear. She had to do her makeup the way she wanted. But yet we all know from other things that have been written that that is not true. It's a narrative. She goes on to say, and we're about to end it here, she goes on to say, she said, but I didn't divorce him because I didn't love him. She said, he truly, truly was the love of my life. She said, I left because I needed to find out what the world was like. Excuse me while I get sick. One of the ladies says, he was devastated when you left. And Priscilla literally paused on this one. And I see her kind of think, how am I going to answer this? And she says, he was shocked. Elvis already knew what she was doing. Elvis already knew she was having an affair with Mike Stone. He had already been told. He already knew what was going on. Was it a blow to his ego? Probably. No doubt about it. Did he want that? Probably not. But the marriage was over. It had been over for a long time. They asked her the one other thing, and this goes back to Priscilla. This is all on her. They said, but you didn't even sleep together after Lisa was born. And she goes, oh, no. But she says it in her book. She says, oh, no. She said, we had a good relationship. Which is it? You see what I'm getting at here? All of these questions that I wrote down and her answers, it's the same old thing. It's a contradiction. I mean, I could go back and probably prove every single one of her answers and give you another answer that she said at another time. There are lots of articles about her, spanning from shortly after she left Elvis all the way up to now, and her answers are not always the same. They can be different, but they're always skewed to make her look like the hero and him to look like the villain. And I'm tired of it. Do you think Elvis, were he here, would approve of the things that she says about him, of the way she makes him look? And yet she is praised for how good she is. You know, there was a post that was made by a guy who does a lot of her photography, and he's talking about how great she was. And I know some of you who watch my show came in and you kind of blasted him and let him have it, and good for y'all, because it isn't true. You know, she can fool people, and she gets people to be on her side because she plays the woe is me card, and that she was above all of that, and that it was just so unfortunate that it happened. But I did love him. But I loved him despite the fact that he was so horrible to me, that he dressed me and I was his doll. And you know, that's not true. This isn't true. And I want you to, if you get her book and you read it, to read it with your eyes wide open. I'm going to read it, because I feel like that we have to stand up and say, stop, enough of this nonsense. Stop with your lies. Stop with the downing of Elvis. Stop making him look like a creep. He wasn't any of those things. And this new generation that we have, the newer generations that are coming along that are fans of Elvis, they listen to what she says because she's known as his wife, his widow. But she's not that either. She's his ex-wife. So, this is my rant for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. And just, you know, write your comments down below. Let me know what you think. And remember, if you haven't subscribed yet, please be sure and do so. I would love to have you become part of the Presley family. So remember, you only get one shot at this life, so live each day to the fullest, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. See you next week, hopefully, everybody. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.